Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are the TRIF3CTA Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Spencer. I'm with my co-hosts, David and Coop. We are on episode 6 of our podcast show. If you haven't already, if you're watching the YouTube channel, like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure that you go ahead and follow us, download all of our episodes, and just follow us on Facebook and tell us what you think. We try really hard. We do a lot of planning. It's a lot of work. Most of all, we're doing it for fun, just to have a good time and get a chance to hang out with each other on the weekends and talk about sports. I'm going to kick off today's show with a shout-out to my boy Kurt Wilson from the Texas Tech baseball team. Over the weekend, the guy was at third base in a tie game against the number 2 ranked Texas Longhorns. Pitcher comes set, looks down, long period of time. Dude breaks for home, steals home for a walk-off win against their arch rival in their opening game of their conference schedule. And then the following day, yesterday, Saturday, hits a walk-off home run in a 12-12 ball game, walk-off grand slam, if I'm not mistaken. The dude is had a big weekend for his team, and Texas Tech and Texas, big huge rivalry there. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Kurt Wilson and that he deserves all of the hype and all of the coverage he's been getting in the college baseball world. And we talked about college baseball on the show before. I don't think it gets enough publicity in terms of an entertaining avenue of watching sports. So if you don't watch college baseball, hop on the ESPN Plus app. There's all kinds of games streamed on the daily there. It's really entertaining, and college baseball is one of my favorite things ever to watch. So got a cool show planned for you today. We're going to talk about the NCAA Tournament. Then we have going to quickly talk about any new NFL signings, the Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Matt Ryan, all those guys. And then we're going to go into a little bit of the USFL, something we've not talked about before on the show. New football, what would you call it? A new football league starting up here soon. They just had their draft recently. We've all three picked a team for no reason at all. We're going to talk about some of the new rules they're trying. So we're going to go ahead and get started into the NCAA Tournament recap. There's currently, at the timing of shooting this video, 6 teams left. Duke and Villanova have already stamped their trip to the Final Four. Kansas and Miami are getting ready to kick off. They're playing here in about an hour. It's 1:10 Eastern time here right now when we're recording this video. And then UNC and St. Peter's, the Peacocks of St. Peter's, a team that I would love to see go to the Final Four, just simply because they've beaten everybody. It's unreal what they've done. But they're playing later on today. This show will probably be out after those 2 games have been set. But just want to get your all's opinions. What is your opinion on the tournament so far?
Coop, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, I got 2 major coaching takeaways. First off, one, and we'll get into this when we look at the conferences here in a minute, Mark Few will never win a national title at Gonzaga.
I agree.
23 years, not going to happen. He's in that conversation you throw out when we talk about the best coaches in basketball. Obviously, Coach K's at the top. He's on his way out. But the Izzos, the Selfs, the Boeheims, and I think Mark Few oftentimes is thrown right in there with Calipari. Like, those are kind of the 5 names I think of. He's the only one without a national title, and I think he's the only one that won't win one where he's currently at. Second takeaway, Jay Wright is the best coach in college basketball.
Yep, I was getting ready to say that.
No question anymore. I think he takes Coach K's crown. I think he's the guy that everybody else is kind of chasing after. This is his 3rd Final Four in the last 5 tournaments. He's won 2 titles. That team just finds a way to win. You look at the stats from that game against Houston. Houston had more field goals made, better field goal percentage, more blocks, more assists, more rebounds, and Houston lost. Like, Villanova just finds a way. It's amazing. 100% from the free throw line. Their execution is insane, and I think they're the only team in a matchup with St. Pete that won't get dictated. Every game St. Peter's has played so far, it's been St. Peter's game.
Yep.
The other team has played to their style. They've dictated what they do offensively. They've had to figure out how to play against that St. Peter's defense. I think Villanova is the only team left that can change that.
Yeah, what I like about Jay Wright is that he's just consistent. They get recruits, but they don't get the best ones. They don't really have a lot of one-and-done guys, which that's kind of out the window right now anyway. It's on its way out. I think the NBA has to go to like either coming straight out of high school or stay for a couple years of college, similar to what baseball does. I think that's probably the avenue they should go. But after watching that game the other day, I did pick Houston to go quite a bit of ways in that our draft show. They're a really good team, but Villanova just they took the game away from them. They held onto the ball, they made shots. Biggest takeaway was their free throws down the stretch. They made them all. Con Gillespie is a good leader. He's a guy that anybody would love to have on their team. And Jay Wright knows how to coach his players, and he's been in those situations, like you said, 3 out of the last 5 tournaments, and it wouldn't surprise me to see them cutting down the nets here in a couple of weeks or in a couple of days.
Yep.
Dave, what's your biggest surprise?
Well, I got a couple that I want to just hit on real quick. The first one being how bad the Big Ten is, which in my mind, not a big surprise at all. Just looking at their stats, they got 9 teams in. They went 9-9, and they have nobody left. I mean, talk about average for a league that everybody hypes up. We'll get into that a little bit later as well. The second one is the ACC. I mean, you were looking at it in late February, early March. You were only looking at Duke, North Carolina, and Miami as the only teams making in that conference. And, Virginia Tech did their thing and won the ACC tournament. But now you got 3 of those teams in the Elite 8, and you could have 3 of those teams in the Final Four after this afternoon.
Yep.
I mean, absolutely amazing how a league that got basically just roasted all year might be the crown jewel. And then thirdly, which I have to go with, is, Shaheen Holloway. He might be the best X's and O's coach in the game right now. Like Coop said it, they have dictated 3 games so far. And Purdue, the Kentucky game, say what it was. The Murray State game, I think Murray State really wasn't as prepared or as good as people made them out to be. I mean, they won 30 games this year, but they are mid-major. They were good, but, not up to Kentucky and Purdue. But then you watch that Purdue game, and they had Zach Edey, who's 7'4", 300 pounds, and he should have had 45 points. And the fact that on the defensive end, they were able to take him out of the game, force him to the bench, it just proves how good of a coach Shaheen Holloway is to get 10 guys to buy in to his approach. And then I said it last show, I'll say it till I die probably. I have not seen a screen action game like that in the college game ever, where they just get so many open shots or open layups. It is truly amazing to me how they run that offense with, pretty much you could say no talent out of high school. So,
yeah, just to echo that, Edey didn't play the last 7 minutes of that game. He came out at like 7:30. They brought in Travion Williams, and I mean,
who did well?
Williams he did okay. But he had a lot of turnovers, right? He's supposed to be a playmaking big. That's his thing. He's a great passer. And he did score, but that defense, he couldn't throw his normal passes on it. His passes that kind of lit up the Big Ten this year, like Dave highlighted, weren't working against St. Peter's. I think we definitely see Holloway at a Power 5 school next year. It sounds like he's pretty much a lock for the Seton Hall job, which Big East isn't Power 5, but in basketball it is. We've had that discussion.
100%.
And an interesting thing, they have 1 senior. So do you see any of these guys going with him to Seton Hall, making that transition to the next level in D1?
It'd be cool to see. Part of me is like, man, I wish they all would stay there and just do it again, run it back. But we all know how that game works. The transfer portal is already on fire in college basketball. And the season isn't even over yet. There's rumors here, rumors there, big name players moving around. And it's going to be pretty interesting here over the summer to see what happens. But Holloway, it's no secret. He's the biggest, he is the biggest surprise, but he seems so confident in himself and confident in his team that he knew this was going to happen. I love his interviews. I think he's a player's coach. The players love him. And I think that's half the battle whenever he's, navigating the waters of that, the untreaded waters of being in the NCAA tournament that, they've never been to before. None of those guys have ever even sniffed a Final Four before. And now they're on the edge and they're on the breaking point. And there's, you beat three really good basketball teams. That's not a fluke, right? You can't do that three times in a row. Can they do it 4 times? Part of me says yes. And then a part of me says, no, their magic's about to run out. The basketball gods, I don't think, is not going to let a Duke North Carolina Final Four not happen in Coach K's final year. That's just my opinion. I would love nothing more than to see St. Peter's beat North Carolina and then come back, and beat Duke to go to the final game. How awesome would that be? And we've never even had anything like this happen before. They're the first 15 seed to make it to the final or the Elite Eight, and they did it convincingly. And it wasn't even that close of a game toward the end. So I agree with both of y'all. Those big things. One of the other biggest surprises I have to say is North Carolina. They were pretty much dead in the water. Late in the season during the or the ACC tournament, and now look at them. You've got Brady Manick averaging like 27.5 points a game or something like that. In the tournament, and that's with him getting kicked out with like 7 minutes left of the last game they played. They've got big time players stepping up in big time situations, and that's what's great about postseason basketball and postseason sports in general is because you really can't predict what happens. We all fill out these brackets, and then they all go to hell within the first weekend, and then we're all just enjoying the ride from there. We can all predict who they're going to be the Final Four, who's going to win the national championship, but at the end, it could be St. Peter's, and we don't ever know, and it would be awesome to see. I think we can all agree that we can probably bet or want to say that nobody would like to see Coach K win in this final year. But unless you're a Duke fan, I don't think I would like to see that happen.
Yeah. One more thing on the ACC, like David said, absolute shock. 12-2 is insane. And before the conference tournament, before Carolina wins that game at Cameron, every team but Duke was a bubble team. Miami was on the bubble. Notre Dame was on the bubble. Virginia Tech wasn't even in. If they don't win that tournament, they don't get in. Carolina, I had them out right before that game against Duke. I didn't think they'd make it. So, it's insane that they're having the success that they have. I really hope Carolina can pull it off. Everybody's talking about their guard play. I don't think it's good. I know they're putting points up, but those two guards are combining for 36% field goal percentage in the tournament. They think they have the volume shooter badge in 2K. The more shots they get up, the more go in, but they drive me crazy watching them. That's just me being a critical fan, but I really hope they can pull it off.
Well, you aren't the only one. I saw a tweet today about how I think it was DraftKings Sportsbook, where it was 75% of the money is on St. Peter's to win today, and it would be one of the biggest future losses in like gambling history if St. Peter's were to win the championship. Which, interesting note, I don't know if you guys gamble or not, but for college sports, you're not allowed to gamble on in-state teams. So New Jersey residents aren't able to pick or bet on St. Peter's, so they can actually bet North Carolina to win or to be the best finisher out of the East Regional. And if St. Peter's wins today, they will still win their bets because St. Peter's is not allowed to be bet on.
Wow.
Huh. I live in Kentucky. We don't do sports betting here. Our legislators think it's, not cool, but we're the horse capital of the world, and we're only known for betting on horses and selling booze. So, that's where I live. It's kind of great, but I wish I could bet on sports. That's just me.
Yeah, I've been betting on sports for about 3 weeks now. I'm a quarter 50 cent dollar guy. Nothing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But
I'd probably go like $25 a week, something. Spread it out evenly. You turn on a random game, it makes it way more interesting when you got something on the line. So
yeah,
I kind of wish I was able to do that, but we can't.
Yeah, soon enough.
So any last parting thoughts on the NCAA tournament? It's been one for the books.
Yeah, I have a question for you guys. Do you think the whole transfer portal atmosphere now has cultivated where St. Peter's, we have now seen the first 15 seed make it to the Elite Eight? Because, I mean, it's in essence, like I think, Frank, you said it, they might all go to Seton Hall, but this is literally an open tryout. This is their fourth open gym tryout for schools.
Yeah, I think that is a great point. You kind of already see it so far. Like there's rumblings of Scottie Pippen Jr. maybe putting his name in the hat, transferring elsewhere. I think Coach Cal's gearing more toward the transfer portal instead of high school athletes from now on, which is a good thing in my opinion. You've seen it with, a bunch of Auburn's guys, Colton Kessler coming from North Carolina, Wendell Green coming from EKU. You've got some, one of Texas Tech's best players was from, where was he from? He was from a smaller school that did really good in the NCAA tournament last year. And that was his open tryout, got picked up, offered, to go to Texas Tech. You see it all over the place. Brady Manick, North Carolina, he's from Oklahoma. So you get these guys in and out. So, Kentucky's best players this year were transfers. I think the college basketball world is geared more toward getting guys that are already proven, getting guys that are older, because they see the Villanovas of the world consistently being at the top of the list. You're going to have, Duke has a really good team this year, obviously. A couple of really good star freshmen, but they've got some older guys in there too. I don't know that many of them are transfers, but they're older. So the youth movement in college basketball is kind of moving out of its way, and you're getting, more 1 and 2 year guys turn into 3 and 4 year guys because they have to sit behind these transfers that are coming into these bigger schools.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good thing in my opinion, but it is interesting to see what happens with all these guys that are on St. Peter's teams. Like, my boy Doug going to stay at St. Pete, or is he going to go somewhere else? He's going to get a big opportunity. We don't know.
Yeah, I think NIL plays into that as well. And Edwards a great example. He just got that big deal with Buffalo Wild Wings right from the tournament. So as much as you see these kids getting open tryouts and going to other schools, I think it's also going to encourage those 3-4-star prospects that don't get that offer to Duke, that don't get that offer to UK or Carolina, say, hey, I'll go to a small school. I'll try to get my NIL deal as the best player on the team. I'll try to get that tryout and then move on. So I think it'll go both ways. You're definitely going to see an increase in the portal. That's why one of the main reasons Roy stepped away from the game, Roy Williams, without telling anybody, like it just changed so fast. And I'm not saying he couldn't keep up. I think he's one of the 5 greatest college basketball coaches of all time. We can debate that another day. But that was one of his main reasons. And you're seeing a lot of these older style coaches not being able to keep up in that environment.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's good. That's a good analysis there, Coop.
Yeah. I honestly think, we're in Kentucky. Me and Frank, huge Kentucky people, so we were talking about it. Calipari, the last couple of weeks of that season, he talked about Bryce Hopkins and how Damian Collins were going to be the X factors for Kentucky to make a long playoff run. And what happened against St. Peter's, they didn't play. I don't know. I mean, it was a tight game the entire time. But at the same time, did he not want them to get their tryout? Because, those were 2 guys everybody had stamped as gone. Damian Collins has since said he's going to come back. I haven't seen anything on Bryce Hopkins yet, but I would assume that Kenny Payne will be dipping his hand back in his old honey pot. So, you love to speculate, but I agree. I think it's way easier to now, you can tell the kids, hey, you're going to get all this fame, you're going to get all these memories for winning games, but now you can also say, hey, you can monetize off this, not just after this year, but going forward. This is your chance to, maybe even make yourself a name to get in the NBA, to, elevate yourself to a Kansas, Arkansas, or North Carolina program. So.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool watching how things play out here in the next couple of weeks after the season ends. But I think if you guys are good, we'll move on to we're going to skip on down to our NFL topics. big news in the NFL this week. Tyreek Hill decided that he was going to leave the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that kind of made him who he is, to join the Miami Dolphins in a big blockbuster trade. The deal is worth $120 million on a 4-year deal, if I'm not mistaken. He was traded for a 2022 first-round pick and a second-round pick, as well as a fourth-round pick, and also a 2023 fourth-round pick and sixth-round pick. The first thing we'll talk about is what does that do for the Chiefs, and then we'll come back around and and I'll ask you guys the same thing about what does that do for the Dolphins. So, my opinion on that first question is for the Chiefs. I didn't know that was coming, but I was wondering why they signed Juju a couple weeks ago, and I was like, that doesn't seem like something they would need. But I feel like they knew this Tyreek thing was coming, so they had to go get somebody. I think that's a humongous downgrade, in my opinion. But Juju's a really good wide receiver, has proven himself with a mediocre Ben Roethlisberger at best. And now he gets Patrick Mahomes. So the production's probably not going to be the same, but I think they're going to have to replace Tyreek Hill's production with a number of different people. Mainly Travis Kelce is going to get a bigger upgrade of what he already had, which is a ton. But I think he's going to be the focus now. I do think it's going to make teams who are playing the Chiefs, it's going to make their lives a little bit easier preparing for their offense. But Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, we've already talked about before. They're magicians at their jobs. They're going to figure it out. They signed also Valdez-Scantling from Green Bay as well. So there's two guys to take, Tyreek Hill's place. They already got Mecole Hardman and Josh Gordon still on that roster as well. So, and they've got pretty good running backs. So, what is your all's opinions? How does it work out for the Chiefs?
I don't think it's a huge impact for the Chiefs. I really don't. There's going to be a little bit of dip. I think that Tyreek Hill needed Mahomes more than Mahomes needed Tyreek Hill. He's played 5 games in his Kansas City career without Hill. He's averaging 350 yards a game. His touchdown to interception is 8-1. Completion percentage is still 65. I really think Patrick Mahomes is the reason that not questioning Tyreek Hill's ability and skill at all. I think you're going to see more of a dip in Hill going to Miami than you will in Mahomes without him. They still have speed. He calls himself the fastest man in the league, and he lost a 40-yard sprint at the Pro Bowl to a defensive end, right? Micah Parsons won that race. Hardman still can stretch the field. Valdez-Scantling can stretch the field, and they're 5'11" and 6'5", so they give you a little bigger target when you get into that red zone. It doesn't just have to be Kelce now. I think Juju's a great possession receiver that can take over the short yardage routes. It is going to be a combination, but I don't think that Mahomes has a big dip.
Yeah, this move was years in the making. It was just a matter of when. If you would have asked me, this would have happened probably at the trade deadline, because I think he still had 1 year left on his deal. But as soon as Devontae Adams became the highest paid wide receiver, Tyreek Hill went right to the Chiefs like, you're going to give me the contract, right? And they're like, sorry, we've already paid Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. We don't have the money for that. So it was inevitable. I think they got a haul. But the Chiefs, I agree with Coop. The Chiefs, I don't think are any worse without him. I mean, he is a playmaker and a top 5 receiver, no doubt. But they drafted Mecole Hardman, 3 or 4 years ago, who is a mini Tyreek Hill. Shouldn't say mini. He is Tyreek Hill version 2.0. Is he as good as he is right now? No. But when Tyreek Hill came to this league, what was he known as? A gadget guy. He was the guy that got the reverse and would take it to the house. He would take the punt returns to the house. And Mecole Hardman's been the gadget guy for the Chiefs for the better part of 2-3 years now. And now he will move into Tyreek Hill's role to be the speed guy, which he has plenty of speed. So I agree with Coop. I don't think the Chiefs are any worse. I think Juju, Juju was hurt the past couple 2 years, but he's still like 24. He's really young. I think the Chiefs are fine. Really, if I'm the Chiefs, I'm more worried about my protection because that AFC West defense is going to be stupid. So, I think the Chiefs they're fine. They're going to do Chiefs things. It's going to be the wild, wild West, regardless of Tyreek Hill being a Chief or a Dolphin. So,
yeah.
Yeah, Dave, you mentioned speed. But at this point, when we look at the Dolphins side of things, let's talk about the speed that now is in possession of Tua Tagovailoa, or maybe Tom Brady. We don't know. That rumor's been flying around, but we'll go with Tua for now. Let's just say Tua is a quarterback. How are you feeling if you're Tua Tagovailoa?
I would feel hot because he is under the microscope and it is in sunny South Beach, Miami, and he is getting roasted right now. If this guy doesn't perform, we're talking about it right now. He might not even be there. It might not even be his team. And because talk about, as of right now, he's got, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Parker, which is Parker a free agent? I've heard his name floating around.
I think he's still there. I think he's still under contract. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah. And then Mike Gesicki, who is probably one of the most athletic tight ends in the league.
He's a glorified wide receiver is what he is.
Yeah. And then
that plays on his line.
And then now he's got Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert at running back. And he's facing, the AFC East. I've said it. It's not what it used to be. So if they don't go win the AFC East this year, I think he's gone. He's traded or cut or whatever. It's somebody else's team.
Over the Bills?
Yeah, I would. The only thing that makes me pause is Brian Flores is a great defensive coach, and Miami always had a good defense. And now that he's gone, I'm not sure what to think about that defense. Mike McDaniels is an offensive guy. I'm not really up to speed on who the new D coordinator is, but so that's my only hesitation is their defense and being able to stop that Bill offense.
Yeah. So after this trade, I really, looked a lot at the Dolphins, and two things stood out to me. One, Mike McDaniels is the head coach, right? Coming from San Francisco, we expect it to be a very similar style. He seems like he's building his roster in the same way with guys that can run and catch, yards after the catch, all that. Second thing is Teddy Bridgewater. He's got a $6 million contract, almost the exact same contract that Mariota signed, who is an unquestioned starter in Atlanta right now. And if you're looking at the style of San Francisco, they had the young guy with more potential, little more, flashy plays in Trey Lance, and they went with Garoppolo. Does Miami do the same thing? Do they go with the game manager who we know, on a mediocre team can win you about half your games if you give him above average weapons and, like Dave said, what's been a good defense in the past? Do they go that route and just try to make the playoffs instead of elevating Tua, maybe let him build for another couple years under that system? So that's something I really want to watch. I could see Bridgewater starting the season. Again, all this is pending those Brady rumors have no merit, and that's huge. I'm sure we'll get into that here in a minute.
Well, we can just get into it right now. Tom Brady has made waves in the last calendar year through social media, through his decisions, and we've already discussed that he's hands down the greatest football player of all time. Just simply based on stats, accomplishments, what he's done with one team, what he's come and done with another team, and now he's got his, we don't know, maybe he's got his sights set on a different team. Do you think that if something does happen that Tom Brady ends up wearing that teal and orange, does that elevate them to a Super Bowl contender immediately?
Yes.
100%.
I agree. I think so too. Think about Tom Brady has had really good players play around him. He's had good running backs. He's had good receivers. But has he had somebody like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle together at the
Randy
same
Moss.
time?
Yeah, Randy.
At the end of his career, though. It's still Randy Moss, don't get me wrong. But he wasn't like Randy Moss at that time. He did have, but I don't know. You could probably say Mike Evans and Antonio Brown at the same time, but we all saw how that worked out. I just think if Tom Brady had those weapons, and we didn't even talk about Lynn Bowden, who may be something thrown in there now. He's finally healthy. He's probably not going to have a big role there anymore.
Yeah.
But it's a good opportunity for that guy to learn from Tyreek Hill, who's, a similar player. Tyreek Hill's obviously hands and feet above Lynn Bowden. Lynn Bowden's just now starting his NFL career. He's not really gotten a foot in the door yet, but it's a good opportunity for him. And that's just another receiver they can, use all around the field. I think the Dolphins have a lot of good weapons, and I would be anxious to see if something happens in the very near future. It would have to happen fairly quickly, you would think, if Tom Brady was decided, or if it was decided that, he's moving there. And it would have to be in a trade, correct?
Yeah, I'm waiting on Gronk. That's what I'm waiting on. I think that's the deciding factor. Once we know what Gronk's doing, we'll know what direction things are going with Brady. Like Arians laid it out in a press conference while Brady was out of the league. He said 5 number ones. I don't even think Miami has 5 number ones. I also think the investigation is a big part of this. That's kind of the story I heard, was that if Flores didn't blow the whistle in the manner that he, rightly should have, then it was a done deal. They had this kind of laid out and planned out before the season was over. And I don't think it happens because of that, because so many emails and messages and everything is being investigated by the league. And there may have been some tampering with Brady if that was the case. But super interesting to think about.
Yeah, I don't think it happens either. I think it's, Dan Arnold is the one that broke this rumor, and he's the one that pretty much told everybody that Tom was going to Tampa, or he was the one that broke the news. So I think it's getting a little more traction just because of his history on breaking Tom Brady news. But I think, we've talked about it for however many shows now. The AFC is absolutely loaded. Why would Tom Brady want to go from the NFC, which he's only got to go basically through the Rams and the Packers, maybe not even the Packers at this point, just the Rams, to the AFC, where now,
there's 12 teams that could win a Super Bowl over there.
Oh, and you have 3 teams in your own division that you could probably say could be Super Bowl contenders. Don't want to discount Bill Belichick and what he's able to pull off. But, it is – I think it's far-fetched, but I do agree with Jacob that Gronk will – I think the Gronk news, whether he's going to retire, sign with the Bucs, sign with the Dolphins, that'll tell us immediately what's going to happen. So,
yep.
Go ahead, Coop.
I think one of the biggest pulls, if I'm Brady and knowing who Brady's been through his career, the mindset he has, he would love to go to Miami and guarantee himself a chance to play in Foxborough every year and walk out of there with a W. I think that's the biggest allure for him because he's that kind of guy. He's won the titles. He's got the records, but let me just go beat Bill once a year in his own house.
Well, and Bill struggles against the Dolphins historically. I don't know what it is, but the Dolphins own them. And Tom Brady has to be licking his chops. I don't know how many years he was with the Patriots, but he faced that defense every day in practice. He's not scared of Bill Belichick's defense. He knows it like the back of his hand. So I agree with that. He would love to go into his old stomping grounds and come out with a dub.
As a rebuttal, you have seen a lot of current Buccaneers players choose to come back and re-sign with the Buccaneers. I don't know, and they're really big cases like Ryan Jensen, offensive lineman, a couple other guys. Yeah. I don't think you have that many people, that many high-quality, high-value free agents come back and re-sign with your team if they haven't heard already that Tom Brady is staying, because they would have gotten way bigger offers, way better offers probably from other teams with a quality quarterback. Because if Tom Brady leaves, I don't think, this late in the game, I don't think you would get a quality quarterback to come lead your team.
Yeah, but
unless you just straight up traded for him.
What if this isn't really Brady's doing? What if it's Arians and the Bucs GMs and the Dolphins really are offering 4 first rounders, and they're like, Brady's 45. We're gonna have to get a quarterback at some point. They have a Super Bowl winning team. It's not a.
But you don't have the most important position on the field to win the Super Bowl.
But that's what I'm saying is if you put Tua, so I said it, if Tua doesn't take them to the playoffs or deep into the playoffs, he's probably gone if he's a Dolphin this year. Do you, as a Tampa Bay Buccaneers, would you take that chance on a Tua when that's throwing to a Chris Godwin and a Mike Evans to come in and take over the best NFC offense?
With the draft picks, I'm getting alongside him because you can't do
that.
Yeah. You can't do that straight up. And Brady is year to year. If I could get 3 number ones in Tua, I'm pulling that trigger because I've already locked up some assets this offseason with long-term deals. I got Godwin on an extension, which was priority number 1. You still have a good offensive line, like you said, and a defense that can compete. So it's interesting. If I'm the Buccaneers, I'm looking at it, but.
Yeah, it's pretty spicy up in here when it comes to some theoretical situations. But, we can sit there and talk all day, but we're going to talk about some, other quarterbacks, namely Matt Ryan, Marcus Mariota. I'm going to ask you this question. Which one is going to have the most success for their respective team?
Matt Ryan.
Oh, yeah, that's an easy question, Matt Ryan.
Is Matt Ryan the guy that takes the Colts to a playoff? That's a tough question. I know it is. Carson Wentz almost did it.
I say yes.
Is Matt Ryan on a higher level than Carson Wentz?
Oh, yeah.
I think he is too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say he can get them to the AFC wild card round because the AFC is going to be so insane this year. I think the East, or I think the North and the West are going to beat the hell out of each other, and you might only see one team make it into the playoffs, depending on how it all shakes out. And I could see 2 teams. I could see a Titans and a Colts making it out of the South.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable, especially since the bottom half of that conference has got kind of worse. That's not a tough division. You have a couple of teams that, like we said, could make the playoffs. The other 2 aren't even in the running. So
one of the things that I would like to keep an eye on is all of these pass rushers making their way to the AFC. I don't want to see it happen, but I think injuries to quarterbacks is going to be an issue this year. Simply because of the sheer volume they're going to be put under pressure. I think you're going to have really good teams lose out on a lot of wins based off of not being able to protect the quarterback. And we all know that's the most important position on the field when it comes to winning the Super Bowl or winning games in general. But I feel like in my gut, there's so many teams stacking their defenses. Defense is going to greatly outweigh offensive production this year in the AFC, and I do think injuries are going to play a part in teams' success this year.
Yeah, we definitely could see it, especially with the longer season. We have the extra game. We say it's only a game, but it matters. It's extra preparation time. It's extra reps in practice. And teams are going to have to compete so hard at the top of that AFC. They know the talent that's there. You've seen the transition of talent from the NFC to the AFC offensively and specifically, like you said, in that pass rush position. So I think a lot of these teams have got better on their offensive line. The Dolphins are one for sure, added 2 huge pieces, the best tackle on the free agent market in Armstead, and then they got Connor Williams out of Dallas. I think those are 2 huge additions. Buffalo also getting Roger Saffold from Tennessee. And then they picked up Von Miller. We haven't talked about that yet.
No, we haven't.
Buffalo went out and got 2 Pro Bowlers, one on the offensive line, one on the defensive line or defensive front. And, Dave's talking about Miami beating Buffalo. I think Buffalo is clear Super Bowl favorite right now, in my opinion. They were already a step above in talent for me, and then they go and add 2 Pro Bowlers. I think, not to disregard the injury topic because it could be a major issue, especially on a team like Buffalo with a physical quarterback. and they lost their safety net there with Trubisky leaving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the name of the game is going to be the running game. You know, you saw yesterday the Chiefs went out and signed Ronald Jones from the Bucks. Is that a big splash? I don't think so. It's still going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire's team. But you look at the Chargers that have Austin Eckler. You got the Raiders with Josh Jacobs. You got the Bills. I think they're starting to roll with Devin Singletary, but they also have Josh Allen, who runs that a lot. You know, the Bengals have Joe Mixon. It's going to be those tough defenses. You're going to have to wear them down. And you wear a team down by running the ball. And I think that's where the Chiefs' hugest crack in their foundation is Patrick Mahomes going to throw the ball 40 to 50 times a game. And against that AFC West defensive fronts, you can't do that. You got to run the ball 20, 30 times and wear those guys down so that you open up those chances, especially when you don't have a Tyreek Hill that can blow the top off a defense for that 75-yard score.
So do you elevate some rushing teams then? Do you think Tennessee and Cleveland look a little better because they're so effective in the run game and they have those bruising backs?
Yeah, I look at like a team like the Raiders, where I know Josh Jacobs didn't have a great year last year, but you add in a Devontae Adams who's going to take some safety help. They're going to eliminate some of that safeties coming into the box. I look at them as being a team that could come out of that AFC West that wins it, just because when I look at their running games, I like him the best. I know there's a lot of good running backs in that division, but, you know, Austin Eckler is more of a passing back. The Chiefs' running games was almost non-existent last year. The AFC North, they have some good running backs, but I look at a team like the Raiders and the Titans and the Browns as like the kind of my teams that they look the best right now. Browns depending on the Watson, which we'll get into.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was headed here in just a second anyway, so we can go ahead and dive into that. Deshaun Watson, obviously a huge splash with the Browns, immediately elevates them to a really, 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 really good team in probably one of football's toughest divisions. This is a quarterback game, fellas, and we know that. Deshaun Watson historically on a, sometimes a really good Texans team, sometimes a really bad Texans team, continued to put up numbers. So regardless of who he had throwing the ball to, whether it was DeAndre Hopkins or Will Fuller or some other guys, he still put up numbers, was able to lead a team to multiple wins and have playoffs chances. I think putting him onto the Browns is helping them make a playoff push. I don't know if it's going to put him over the edge, but that's a really, really, really good offense and a really good defense. But he's still got this lingering sort of, cloud over his head. Is he ever going to get cleared to play? I mean, is he cleared to play right now? I'm not even sure. We do know that, one grand jury has already, dropped all charges. He's only been faced by a grand jury on 12 of the 23 charges that he currently has. The NFL still, we've yet to wait on the decision. I did read the other day that all the NFL teams that were vying for his services, similar, like for say, like the Browns and the Panthers, they never really contacted any of the lawyers in those settlements and all the legal things. They never really dug deep to find any information about how things were going. I think they just jumped on the opportunity and they would figure it out later. But is there anything new on the Deshaun Watson front that you guys are aware of?
There was a surge in donations to the Rape Crisis Center in Cleveland after his signing or after the trade for him. I think that tells you most of what you need to know about this Deshaun Watson case. It doesn't affect playing time. He is on the commissioner's exemption list as far as I know. No suspension, but he is exempt from football activities right now. And it's terrible. It's bad. Usually, especially in the case of, these public situations that we see, when there's smoke, there's fire. And this guy's got 22 smokestacks going. I mean, there's something there. From my understanding, he could still face criminal charges on about half of these cases. And from the initial grand jury he went in front of, those people involved in that could also file charges individually in a different county. So I think there's a long road ahead. I know he's going to start getting his face in the community, like you said, and start giving back again. But if I'm a Browns fan, one, I don't know why I've done that to myself. And two, I'm breaking out the paper bag this year. Like, I'm not going to that game without a brown paper bag on my face.
Yeah, I think the Browns really screwed the pooch in this situation. I mean, Baker had turned around that franchise. You know, like them, hate them.
Yeah.
They were basement dwellers, and they're relevant. They were relevant with Baker Mayfield. And you go and try and get a Deshaun Watson and just absolutely ruin that relationship with Baker Mayfield. You know, Big Ben got 6 games for his alleged assault in 2010. That was alleged. You know, those charges went away.
And it was one.
Yep.
It was one.
Yeah.
We're talking about 22, 23 charges here. I don't think Deshaun Watson plays this year, at least. And, I mean, that's why they went and got Jacoby Brissett. But, going back to my Baker Mayfield, if I'm the Browns, why? I'd want Baker Mayfield throwing to Amari Cooper than Jacoby Brissett. I get that Deshaun Watson is an absolute playmaker. He's a good quarterback. But, the fact that you just put away your paper bags and now you got to get them back out, it just shows how bad of a run franchise that is.
Yeah, the best availability or the best ability is availability. And we don't know if this guy's even going to be, available to leave the state.
Ever.
We don't know. I mean, he could be facing time in a correctional facility of some sort. Like, we don't know where this is going to go and the investment they've made in him. The Jaguars set a record this season for the most guaranteed money spent in a single offseason at $170 million. The Browns surpassed that with one player at $230. And I'm sure there's something in the contract. If he doesn't play at all, that money can't be fully guaranteed. But, I'm mind blown on this. I don't know what else to say.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see how things play out. Just like the rest of the NFL, when we're talking about players actually who matter and players that are actually going to have an impact on their teams, we're talking now about a player who may not have an impact on their team at all, other than a negative light shined, or I don't know the words, negative light on your team, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
Which, if you're the Cleveland Browns, you've been living with that negative light on your team forever. And, as much crap we've given Baker Mayfield over the last few weeks, he was their best option there. Well, I mean, just let him play. Let him see what he could do.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's going to be interesting to see how things play out on the Deshaun Watson front. But we're going to move on to a different type of football, and that is the USFL. The USFL is a league that has been started with a lot of former NFL players, former NFL and college coaches. There's some pretty decently sized names. A lot of them are, kickbacks from the old XFL that had, gone defunct a couple of years ago. What was the other league they had that did pretty well, but COVID kind of took them down? What was that league?
It's like the UFL or something?
The UFL, something like that, yeah. So what we've done, the USFL is trying some really cool rule changes. I'm going to kind of just review these really quick, and then we're going to talk about which ones you like, which ones are cool, which ones you think maybe the NFL should adopt. So the first one is after a touchdown, your team can opt for a 1-point, 2-point, or 3-point try after the touchdown. So your PAT, it could be worth 1, 2, or 3 points. For 1 point, you kick the ball from a 15-yard line, which is similar to what we have now for extra point. For 2 points, you can start an offensive play and run the offensive play from the 2-yard line. That is a little different. Is it 3-yard line or 4-yard line in the NFL?
I think it's 3.
3, yeah.
It's something. It's something. It might be in the middle somewhere. There's a line there that I should know that, but I don't. But you can go for a 3-point try by running an offensive play from the 10-yard line. That's kind of interesting to me. I think it's kind of cool when you have a wrinkle like that thrown in that's a little different than what you normally would see. It makes it more interesting, and I think that's kind of what the USFL is trying to do to get people to watch. They do have an alternative to an onside kick as well. So for an onside kick, I think you can go for it. Is it 4th and 12 from your own 33-yard line? If you get it, then you get to keep the ball. Is that correct?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get it, the other team keeps the ball where the play started, right?
Yep.
All right, yeah. And then in the Pro Bowl, the NFL did a 4th and 15 from their own 25 to kind of, give you a little bit of comparison there in the Pro Bowl. In terms of clock stoppages, the clock stops following a first down during the final 2 minutes of the second and fourth quarter. I love this. I think that is awesome. So after the 2-minute warning, every time you get a first down, the clock's going to stop. Now, let me ask you all this. Does it restart when the ball is set, or does it just stop completely?
That I think it's just a dead ball, like completely stops from my understanding, but I don't know.
Okay, because like in high school, when you get a first down, anytime the clock stops until the ball is set, until the chains get set.
Yeah.
But if it stops completely, kind of like a run out of bounds or something like that, that makes things a lot more interesting late in games, especially close games.
Yeah.
In overtime, we have a shootout. The best of 3 with the ball at the 2-yard line. And then at the end, it's sudden death if tied. What I love about this is there are no ties.
Yeah.
The fact that you can tie in an NFL game is stupid. I don't understand it. To have a kickoff or something, like put them at the 50, like a shootout in hockey. Just let them kick. That gives you your kicker even more value. But they're also on this. There you can have a second forward pass, so you can throw it behind the line of scrimmage, forward twice, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And in those plays, there cannot be a pass interference or an ineligible receiver downfield on passes that happen behind the line of scrimmage. So that's kind of really new to me. I've not heard of that happening before. I guess what you could have was like maybe a couple of throwback passes across the field, or, one of those pitches forward and a pitch backwards, and then another, a lot of trick plays can happen. I guess that takes care of that.
Yeah, I think you can see lineman screens with this rule. You can start seeing, awesome, because there's no ineligible receiver behind the line of scrimmage. Robert Hunt's touchdown for Miami would have counted in the USFL.
Yeah. That's one of our plays of the year in our NFL award show.
Yep.
So what do you guys think of these rules? What's your favorite one? I've already talked about my favorite. My favorite one is the clock stoppage. And I like the no tie game. That's obvious. But I do like the clock stoppages within the final 2 minutes of the second and fourth quarter. What's your all's favorites?
I like the alternative to onside kick because they are just so low percentage right now. I think this gives you maybe a 20% chance at getting that ball back instead of what is, I don't even know the average right now of recovering an onside kick in the NFL. But it seems super low. I also think it plays into player safety. We know kickoffs are extremely dangerous. Players running open field, high speed. So I really like that. I do not like this 3-point try at all. This makes a touchdown worth potentially 9 points. And it is going to render your kickers less valuable, right? You have to have 3 field goal possessions now to make up for one of these touchdowns with a 3-point try. I don't like that.
I'm going to go the complete opposite and say I love the 3-point try. I'm a big fantasy football guy, and I have joined a few leagues the past few years where kickers have been obsolete. And I think that might just be a trend in fantasy sports where kickers you don't even play them. You don't even have them on a roster spot. And being fantasy minded, I love points. I mean, in our fantasy football league, me and Coop jacked with the point system, and we, the big scoring games are 500. We've seen, I think we've seen an elusive 600-point game. So if you're telling me I can get more points at fantasy football with a 3-point try, I am all for it. Give it to me. Give me those points. But at the same point, you're going to get no game is out of reach unless it's an absolute blowout. I mean, 9 points. I mean, how many games? I don't know the stat, but I'm saying how many games finished, 10 points or less. It makes it way more interesting to watch.
Yeah.
And it leaves your coaching staff with big decisions to make early on in the game. Like, if you want to go for it, I think the 2-point play is kind of normal. You see more 2-point plays now going on in the NFL. People go for 2 all the time, just like they're going for it on 4th down way more often. I think the leeway and the kind of the negative connotation behind going for it, especially early in a game, it's kind of out the window now. I think this is going to, push that more toward, the more aggressive part of game planning. But if you're scoring the first couple of touchdowns and you decide to go for the 3-point play and you don't get it, all of a sudden now you have 12 points instead of, that's 2 possessions. And your other team can come in, score a touchdown, get that 3-point play, and all of a sudden it's a 1-score game. And they've only had 1 possession and you've had 2, and you've scored on every possession. So I do think it does make it interesting. It does. I do agree with Coop and say that it makes the kickers obsolete and it makes all that happen. But in the grand scheme of things, I think you're still going to see more extra points because they're just guaranteed at that point. A play from the 10-yard line is kind of hard. There's not a lot of room to work with.
Actually, I was going to ask you guys that. You all played football. I didn't. If you were on defense, would it be easier to stop them at the 2-yard line? So basically they only have 12 yards to work with to score, or stop them from the 10-yard line where those receivers have 20 yards to play with?
I think it depends on what kind of offensive team you're playing. If you got Derrick Henry in the backfield, I'm going for 2 every play. Because you're at the 2-yard line, I'm betting that I can get 2 yards with him than anybody else. But if you're a team that has, I don't know, some shifty wide receivers, a lot of good slot guys that you can get open, like a Cooper Kupp. I know we're not talking about the NFL, but I'm just kind of making those comparisons in terms of how I would use them in this format of scoring. I do think that you would be more apt to go for the 3-point play if you had those types of players on your team. I think it's harder to score from 10 yards out because you can't run the ball more than likely. It's going to be a pass, so the defense knows they're going to have to play pass. I do think there's not a lot of room to get separation. You're going to have to be able to throw in tight windows. That's why whenever they get down inside the 20, I would take chances when you're, the 15 to 20-yard line. That's your take a chance to the end zone. When you're closer up, it's kind of hard to get separation. You go for all the fade routes, but there's very few guys that I would trust throwing a fade route to. But I would say scoring from the 10-yard line is more difficult, which is kind of why they probably put the 3-point play on there. Mm-hmm. The 10 is that's a iffy yardage right there because you can still run the ball 10 yards on certain plays.
Oh, no, I think 10 is definitely harder. And that we see it, in the NFL. In high school, definitely. Give me a play from 10. There's not a lot of quarterbacks that are beating me 10 yards out. And if, there is a gap that opens up, we've got 10 yards to recover from it. Mm-hmm. In the NFL, that's why you have red zone targets, right? Like Frank said, there's no separation. Those little guys aren't scoring short touchdowns. It's Mike Evans at 6'5". It's Gronk at 6'6". The ball's going up. So, yeah, give me a jump ball from 10 yards out. I would rather defend that than have to worry about a Derrick Henry from 2.
And if you're at the 2-yard line, you've got play action plays. You've got all those like Philly special trick plays, and you've got quick screens, quick slants, fade routes. Yep. There's so many more things that you have to do from 2 yards that you have an option to do for 2 yards. So offensive-minded people, there's so many things to pick from that you can still be successful with. When you're going in from the 10, it's throw. Yeah, I think it's harder because defenses know that.
Yeah. Yep. One thing I need to research more is I wonder how they're going to handle like pass interference calls, because I could see where teams would say, "Hey, we're going to go for 10, but we're going to try and draw a penalty so that it goes." I know in the NFL it's a spot foul, so if it happens in the end zone, they get a 3-point try from the 1-yard line. If they get it, I don't know how they're going to do that, but it's an interesting thing to look into.
I do think they've addressed their pass interference penalties, haven't they?
It's 15 yards. It's no longer a spot foul.
But there's a certain situation in which it is a spot foul, I think, isn't there?
If it's like an intentional tackle of a receiver.
Right, so you can't just tackle the guy.
Yeah, it's got to be a play on the ball.
So then it would be half a distance to the goal line. So it'd still be so you're still saying you'd go from 10 to 5 if that's what you try.
That really makes it difficult. What does the AFC playoff matchup between the Bills and Chiefs look like with these rules? With clock stopping on first downs, with extra points, with an actual overtime shootout?
they might still be playing.
That's why I was actually going to say that I think that is the worst rule on this, because you see it today in March Madness on how much video review time there is. You're going to
get it forever.
You're going to give Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers unlimited clock, essentially. And the 13 seconds with the Chiefs, you don't get that. Like, you don't get that Travis Kelce seam route where he does it perfectly. That play doesn't matter anymore because the clock stops. It doesn't matter with timeouts anymore with that play. And I think that's just we're going to see really long games. We're going to have a lot of pissed off wives when they're ready for dinner and we're still watching the game.
Yeah, football kind of takes over my whole household. And I'm lucky enough that my wife loves watching football just as much as I do. So I don't know if she's going to like watching the USFL, but she's going to like the team that I picked because it's her favorite player. So I think we'll go ahead and talk about the teams that we picked, and then kind of wrap up the show. We're already an hour in. I think that's a good idea, in my opinion. I'm going to go first. So the team that I picked that I'm going to follow, and then we're doing it now because the draft is over with. We know who the coaches are. We know who's on the team. I'm going to go with the New Orleans Breakers as the team that I'm going to follow for the USFL. And then hopefully when the season starts, we'll give you a little update on how our teams are doing throughout the year. And there's one reason and one reason only why I'm picking the Breakers as my team. They drafted kicker Austin McGinnis from the University of Kentucky. I'm a firm believer that dude is probably one of the greatest kickers of all time in the history of Kentucky football. Him and Lona Sieber are probably the only two that you could even think about being at the top of that list. But the dude won us so many games in the prime upcoming of Mark Stoops and his threshold of building a program here that's worth something. And I think he's a really big part of it. He won us a lot of big games. He was my wife's absolute favorite player. And if anybody knows anything about my wife, she loves kickers. Logan or McPherson and Austin McGinnis are at the top of that list. So I'm picking the Breakers simply because they have my wife's favorite player, probably of all time, on their team. Other than that, I couldn't tell you a whole lot about them. I don't even know who their coach is, to be honest with you. I don't even care. But I'm pretty sure we just picked our teams based on one or two people that are on that team anyway. So I got the Breakers. Coop, who you got?
Yeah, I did pick mine off one person, and it's the coach. I'm a coach guy. You hear me talk about it a lot in all the sports. That's what I'm referencing. And this one, they've got Jeff Fisher. He's been to the Super Bowl, 20-some years in the NFL. Guy is a great talent, and, I think he can really, really do something in this league. One other notable player that they do have on the Michigan Panthers is Shea Patterson from the University of Michigan at quarterback. So I think it's awesome to see a hometown kid playing for we're going to call it professional football league because it is, right? They're paid players. And one thing to point out, the USFL isn't brand new, right? This league was around 37 years ago.
Yeah, and the same team names too.
Yeah, and they produce some Hall of Fame NFL talent. Reggie White's one that comes to mind. I think there was a big time running back that came out of there as well. But yeah, excited to watch these teams when they start playing on April 16th.
All right, Dave, who's the team you're going to pick, and why did you pick them?
All right, I have absolutely zero reason why I picked this team, but I did. So the Tampa Bay Bandits are going to be your 2022 USFL champions. You heard it here first, people. So clearly they're out of Tampa, Florida. You got to love Florida, no income tax. Love it. Those guys are lucky they got drafted there. Head coach Todd Haley, also a staple in the NFL. Head coaching stint with the Chiefs. And really, the true reason why I picked this team was they picked Jordan Tiamu as their quarterback. I was so sad when the XFL suddenly folded due to COVID reasons. And Jordan Tiamu was my beloved St. Louis Battlehawks quarterback, and that guy is a stud. I know he did some time on the Chiefs practice squad, so I'm looking forward to watching him just tear up some defenses. Also, one other notable name, if any of our listeners are Netflix users and like the original Last Chance U, I know it kind of broke off here the last few seasons. But we got John Franklin III as a wide receiver. You all should remember him from, I think, season 1 when he was at East Mississippi. And he ended up at Florida Atlantic, and I know he's bounced around in the NFL. I think he was on the Bucs for a while, so we'll get to see him play wide receiver for the Bandits.
Yeah. On the XFL, it's coming back, right?
Yeah.
It's not gone.
No, it's not gone. The Rock.
It's not gone. It's coming back.
The Rock made.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how it's going to work with the USFL. I know that both organizations are working with the NFL, though, if I'm not mistaken, in some form or fashion. Some maybe one more than the other one, but I think experimental rules like we're seeing in the USFL, that's what they're kind of focused on a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the USFL is more of like a building block kind of minor league system for the NFL that teams can go and sign players off of those rosters throughout the season. So it's really cool to see something like that.
That's one thing that I think is absolutely dire to the success of these two leagues is them becoming a minor league and having access to those taxi practice squads that the NFL has. I mean, you watch Hard Knocks, those teams start with 100 guys. If those XFL teams and USFL teams could have access to those guys that aren't going to play, I mean, spring football will have a good product on the field. I think they'll put out a good product, but it could be better if they do have those fringe NFL guys that aren't going to go to the USFL because they are under contract with an NFL team.
Yep. Yeah,
and the product at the NFL level is going to be better too, because you're going to have more people that come out of college, maybe are not NFL ready yet. They go to a smaller league, play, not weaker competition, but it is kind of weaker competition.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe get a chance to compete for a spot that they wouldn't be able to compete for on an NFL roster and continue their playing career. There's more options out there. When you got 2 leagues, 8 teams, each team probably has 20, I'd say 30 to 40 players on it, if I had to guess.
Yep, 35.
And, that's a lot more that can go into playing football after college. And you never know how people are going to develop as they get a little bit older. Things happen. You graduate from college, you're probably, 22, 23 years old sometimes. I don't remember how old I was. I would think I was 21 when I graduated. But a lot of things happen from your 21 to 25th birthday. You grow up, you figure out things, and you figure out what works for you, and you can mature more as an adult. Because let's just face it, when we're in college, we're still not adults. Well, I feel sometimes I still feel like I'm not an adult. And I'm almost 30. But here we are talking about spring football with the USFL and possibly the XFL. Hey. And once we figure out more about that, we'll cover that too.
Hey, I got one special fact for y'all that I just found. Do y'all remember the movie Invincible about Vince Papale and the Eagles?
His son is on there, ain't they?
His son is on the Bandits, baby. Vince Papale Jr. Another reason why the Bandits are going to win.
Where did he play in college? He was
Delaware.
Yeah, I remember watching him on TV one time in the FCS football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I watched him. I was like, I know that name from somewhere, and it's from Invincible. Great movie. If you haven't checked it out, do so now. I think we're going to wrap up the show right here. Again, episode 6, TRIF3CTA Sports Podcast. We're going to keep going, man. We're having a really good time doing this. We're kind of getting in the groove of things, and this is mostly just us sitting there talking about sports. If you think of anything that you'd like to see us talk about, we're going to move shortly after the NCAA tournament into some more, player rankings, top 5s, Mount Rushmores, more things that can, live its life on YouTube that aren't more current, and things that you guys can go back and look for all the time, more evergreen content that just stays up there. Just a reminder, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would appreciate it. We have 26 subscribers at the moment. We would love to get to 100 before the end of the summer. That would be great. Just click the button. That's all you got to do. Just click it. And then if you want to see us talk about something specific, just shoot one of us a message, comment on a video, and then we'll make sure it happens. We look and read all the comments. We follow everybody on Facebook. I have some pretty cool back and forth with some of my coworkers and people that I know at work. But if you don't care, shoot us a follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We appreciate all the support. We love you. let's get out of here and watch some basketball, fellas.
Yep.
Peace.